Let me guess, you've been looking everywhere for content ideas. You're studying trends, you're looking at the templates, you're looking at other people's pages to see what's working for them. Meanwhile, the entire time, the best content you'll ever make has been sitting in your own pocket. You just didn't know how to use it. But by the end of this video, I'm going to give you a framework that will unlock it. But first, we do have to address why you're stuck. If your content is not connecting, it's not your editing, it's not your algorithm, it's that you're making the same content as everybody else. Someone somewhere along the way told you, find viral content and remake it. But 100 people talking about the same topic and you're number 101 doing the same thing. That's like pouring a bottle of water into the ocean and then calling yourself a wave. Yeah, technically you contributed, but nobody at the beach noticed. And that was even worse because we're in the AI era, right? ChatGPT can write a carousel for you in 30 seconds and it'll be decent, it'll be structured, but it's not yours. It doesn't have style or soul, or it doesn't sound like a conversation. So the audience can actually feel that. Information is now free, which means it's infinite. So information isn't valuable anymore. But what is valuable is the experience behind it. It's the story. It's the moment that only you have lived. And AI can actually replicate your words, but it cannot replicate your life. Now, look, this is not just some random philosophy. This is real science. Stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. So if you're giving your audience a list of tips with no narrative, that's like playing a lottery with their memory. The reason why is because every time you hear a story, there's a potential for 5 hormones to be released. And I'm going to break these down for you very quickly. All right. So the first one is oxytocin. This is what's released when vulnerability happens. This is how you get bonded to the storyteller or the movie. Then there's cortisol. This is what gets released when tension happens. This is the reason why people can't stop watching. Then there's endorphins. This is what gets released when there's humor or surprise. This is like a relief valve in the story. Then there's serotonin. This is what gets released when resolution is made clear. This is the reason why people actually save content. We'll talk about all of these things. And then lastly is dopamine. This gets released when there are payoffs or plot twists. This is the reason why people rewatch, also why they share. Now, the best content is going to have multiple, not just one. And the framework I'm going to give you is built to trigger all of them. But you need raw material. And look, you've been collecting it your entire life. Now, here's where everybody gets stuck because they're like, what do I even talk about? Either you default to some generic advice or you freeze thinking about how you need something groundbreaking. And both of these things are wrong, but they're coming from the same mistake. You're looking outward when the answer is in your pocket. Your camera roll is a database of lived experiences. Every photo, every memory, every emotion is a seed of a story that only you can tell. And I'm going to show you how to actually mine it. All right, so here's what I need you to do. And this is not homework, right? I'm saying this because I've done this exercise myself and it actually changed how I create content. So step one, you're going to open up your camera roll. You're going to scroll back at least 6 months. I want you to find 10 to 15 photos that trigger a feeling. They don't have to be pretty. They don't have to make sense to anybody but you. But they do need to make you feel something. And don't just look for wins either. The photos that are tied to some of your lowest moments will often make some of the best and most powerful content because vulnerability is the fastest way to build trust. Now remember, oxytocin fires when someone shares something real. You're not performing for your audience. You're just letting them in. Okay, now that we got some photos, I'm going to break down for you the story method. It's 5 steps. Each step builds on the last. And by the end, you'll be able to take any photo and turn it into content that connects. Now, again, it's the story method. So story, right? So the S is for scene. Every single story starts somewhere. I didn't mean to have that many S's in that. But if they can't see where you are, then you lost them already. The scene is set to answer one question. Can they see it? This means it's not vague. This means they know where, what time. Was it loud? Was it quiet? Are you alone? Are you with people? This is going to sit your audience down and tell them to relax and pay attention. If you skip this step, comprehension drops and then people scroll. So the first thing that you write from your photo is the scene, not the lesson, the scene. Here's an example of what not to do. If you maybe have a photo and you're like, I was going through a hard time in my business. A better example is I was sitting in Starbucks on Peachtree. My laptop was open. I had $214 in my checking account. The barista called my name for a coffee that I almost couldn't afford. The first one is just a grocery list of events, but the second one It's the recipe. Nobody buys a grocery list, but recipe books sell like hotcakes. All right, anyway, next, what just happened there actually is tension, right? I let the tension build in that silent moment. And now once the scene is set and they can see it, now you got to give them a reason to stay. Tension is the moment where normal ends. It means something is at stake, something is about to break. Without tension, you're not telling a story, you're just giving a status update. Any movie that you couldn't turn off or a show that you just loved to watch and wanted to binge, there was a moment where you were like, oh, what's about to happen? That's tension. So when you look at your photos, you got to ask, what was at stake? What was about to go wrong? What decision were you facing? Every single story has this. Even Keith Lee, right? He's just a food reviewer, but he always says,
I spent $82.52. I spent $28.47. $16.50. Spent $200.06. $129.77.
and that's what's at stake. That's the risk, his money. He does a couple other cool things where he says, let's find out, right? That's inviting people in there, but he's putting people in the scene of the stakes and the tension. Nobody wants to waste their money. Now, another way that you can do this is you can turn facts into feelings. So instead of saying, I was broke, that's just a fact. But if I say, I had one last shot to send this email and I stared at the send button for 20 minutes. If this didn't work, then I was going to close my business down and get a job. Now you're invested because you want to know what the outcome is. So cortisol fires when the brain needs to know what happened. And look, tension does not have to be dramatic. It's simply saying like, oh, I didn't know if this was going to work out. That's tension. Okay. Next is the O, one visual detail. This is the step that most people forget or skip, and it's the biggest difference between forgettable and unforgettable, because one specific concrete sensory anchor that makes the story feel real will lock people in. Not 5 details, 1. Why? Because concrete details get stored twice in the brain. Once as a word, once as an image. I'll break it down. Let's say I'm sitting there and I'm like, I was nervous. This gets stored once because it's vague. But if I say my hands were shaking, I spilled coffee on the keyboard and I watched it drip down onto my keys, one drip at a time. Now that gets stored twice. Once as the audio and another as the visual. If something's stored twice, that means it's twice as memorable. So you find the one thing where if you said it, the person's going to go, damn, I can see that. Now, this could be something as simple as a sound, a smell, what somebody was wearing, how the weather was, a cracked phone, a cracked screen on your phone. This doesn't have to be the most important part. It just needs to be the most specific, because specificity separates the let me tell you about something from let me take you there. People share experiences, not recaps. And when you add specificity, that's an experience, not just a recap. Now we're moving on to R, which is the reveal. This is where the magic happens. This is what turns personal into powerful. It's the shift. It's answering the question about what changed. What did you learn? What did you realize? Who are you as a result? But, and this is probably the most important thing I'm gonna say in this video, a predictable reveal is not a reveal, it's a summary. If your audience can already see the ending coming, there's no dopamine, there's no surprise, which means they're not sharing it. After you identify what your reveal is, ask yourself, what part of this is expected and how can I make it unexpected? That's where the twist lives. It doesn't have to be a big movie plot reveal. This can just be a perspective shift or a reframe, right? Something that makes them go, I never thought of it in that way. Here's an example, right? Here's what's expected versus unexpected. I was sitting there and then I sent the email. I got the client. I saved my business. The lesson, don't give up. The problem with that is there's a poster in every guidance counselor's office in any high school that says the same thing, right? But here's a better way. That email, it didn't save my business. It saved me from ever being comfortable again. Once I knew that I could pull myself out of that moment, being scared stopped being a reason to not try. And I've actually been chasing that Starbucks feeling ever since, because I stopped wanting security and I started wanting growth. See, the expected thing is I got the client, everything's fine, but the unexpected is a reframe of the entire meaning. I'll give you another example, right? I got fired. I felt terrible, but I picked myself up and I started my own business. Predictable, right? Unexpected is like, getting fired was the best thing my boss ever did to me. I'd actually thank him, but I can't find him. He went out of business 2 years later, right? That's the unexpected. Nobody expects you to say that. It's the same facts, but it's a different energy. There's a reframe, there's irony. That creates a dopamine hit. Look, the reveal is not what did I learn? It is what did I learn that nobody would expect me to say about in this moment? Last is why. For you gotta make it about them. And this is the one that most creators probably miss entirely. Your story is not the destination. It's just the bridge. The other side is where your audience actually lives. So you want to take everything that you did, the scene, the tension, the details, the reveal, and then you want to turn it towards the viewer. This is the most powerful thing in content, making somebody feel like you read their mind or you know where they are. So you want to ask yourself the question, why does this matter to them? What are they going through? What belief can be shifted by this? Here's an example with the Starbucks story, right? So if you're sitting somewhere right now, your kitchen table, your car, or coffee shop, and you've got something that you're scared to put out there, a piece of content, a cold email, or a pitch, the version of your life that you actually want is on the other side of that send button. The fear that you're feeling, it's really a checkpoint. It means that you're close. Right? So now I've taken the story and reframed it as a gift for the audience. I'm not talking about me anymore. I'm talking about them. But they feel everything because there's a story behind it, because I earned it with the STOR, right? And then why I made it about them. This is what gets those comments of people being like, I needed this today, right? Content creators share information. Storytellers share transformation. And that's where the money resides. So now I want you to go back to your list of photos that you found, and I want you to write what's called a story seed. It's like a quick blurb, right? There's some questions you're going to answer. What's the first word that comes to mind? Where were you? What happened? How do you feel about it now? How did you feel about it then? And what would you change if you could? So you're going to pick the photo. You're going to run it through the story setting. You're going to set the scene, make them see it. You're going to add the tension, tell people what was at stake. You're going to realize what's the one visual detail to find that sensory anchor. You're going to add the reveal for what shifted. What's the unexpected version? What's the reframe? What's the twist? And then you're going to answer, why should they care? What changes for their life? Now, after that, we're actually going to turn it into a piece of content. It's going to be a reel, a carousel, a YouTube video, whatever. We're just going to go ahead and turn that into a piece of content. And here's what you'll start to realize when you start turning it into content is that one piece of photo, one photo can actually become 3 pieces, 4 pieces of content because the story can be told from different angles. The message can be changed. It can be anchored differently, right? You can repurpose it for different audiences. The details can expand or compress depending upon the platform. Your camera roll isn't just a gold mine. It's actually a renewable resource. You just needed a system to extract the value. And so remember, the problem is not the algorithm. The problem is that everybody's making the same content. And now with AI, information is infinite, which means your lived experience is the only thing that cannot be copied. Again, stories are 22 times more memorable than facts. They trigger the 5 chemicals in the brain that create connection, tension, relief, understanding, and reward. And your camera roll is really a database full of stories just waiting to be told. And again, the system to unlock the story method is going to be S, set the scene. Where are you? Can they see it? T, tension. What's at stake? What's about to break? O, one detail. R, the reveal. What changed? And what's the unexpected way to say it? And then why? You got to make it about them. Why does your story matter to their life? Okay, now finding the story is step 1, but telling it in a way that builds tension so that people literally cannot click away, structuring it so that the algorithm rewards you, using hooks that work on 3 levels that most people don't even know about. That's an entirely different skill set. And that's what video 2 is actually going to be about. I'm going to break down how to structure your stories for maximum retention, how to stack tension, how to use breather moments so that you don't burn out your audience, and then how to build mini stories inside of a longer video so that people feel like they're getting multiple payoffs in one setting. And of course, I'm going to break down the hook because your hook has so many more layers than most people actually talk about. Now, if this added value, and I'm hoping that it did because you're still here, do me a favor, subscribe. Most of you guys are not. It's okay, because you don't want to miss part 2 though. Drop a comment. Let me know which photo from your camera roll you're going to turn into some content, and let me know what your Instagram handle is. And there should be a link there where you'll be able to get the free downloadable guide in the description. It's going to have the full story method checklist plus the story seed exercise, and you can do all of this on your own. The link should be right there. And hey, maybe I'm exaggerating when I say this, but your camera roll could definitely change your entire content strategy. Okay, I'm not exaggerating. So let's go ahead and get to the bag and beyond. I'll see you in part 2.